Imagine a man who doesn't need to bluff to make the whole table break into a cold sweat. Phil Ivey doesn't just play poker, he controls the room. He watches in silence, eyes half closed, barely moving, as if he can read your soul just by the way you stack your chips. And the scariest part, he almost never smiles. He doesn't have to. His stare says everything. Some say Ivey can play in the dark and still see more than everyone else combined. He's that rare kind of player who looks like he was born for this. A talent you don't teach, you don't mimic, you just witness. From early on, he earned the respect of poker legends. Sitting at the same table as him feels like sharing the stage with a maestro. You're not leading the show, you're just part of it. Phil doesn't flinch, doesn't fold under pressure. And the higher the stakes, the calmer he gets, like he's made of ice or steel. That's why people say he turns nerves into gold. Because when everyone else shakes, he shines. And if you're still with us, it means you don't just care about the cards, you care about the story behind them. So take a second to subscribe to the channel, because here we don't just cover plays. We uncover legends, rivalries, scandals, the truth behind the tension. And trust me, this story is just getting started. But even the greatest carry shadows. And sometimes, the higher you climb, the harder the fall. What no one expected was that this silent genius would become the center of one of the most controversial stories in casino history. Because on one particular night, Ivey played differently. And what seemed like just another legendary win quickly turned into suspicion. Sitting down at the table with Phil Ivey isn't just a poker move, it's a psychological test. Even before the cards are dealt, the atmosphere shifts. Silence thickens. Players who usually ooze confidence suddenly shrink in their seats. No one has to say a word. His presence speaks louder than any bet. Dealers become sharper, cameras lock in. Every eye in the casino turns to the man with the unreadable, almost mythical expression. And everyone around him knows, one mistake, no matter how small, can be fatal when you're up against Ivey. Phil didn't stumble into this aura. He built it. With every legendary win, every whispered story in backrooms and lounges, he carved out a space few ever reach. The kind of player feared by those who've seen it all. Casinos, places built to win, learned to dread the nights when Ivey slipped through their doors. Because he's no lucky amateur. He's a strategist who sees the game within the game. And even now, in an era where emotion is a show and bluffing became performance art, Phil remains silent, deadly, like a blade tucked beneath a suit jacket. But not all respect is unconditional. And in a world where everything revolves around trust and appearances, all it takes is a single spark to burn down the name of a legend. That spark came when Phil Ivey decided to step into a different arena. A new game, one more exotic, more dangerous, and far more profitable. That's when he walked into the baccarat room. And there, the cards would tell a story the whole world would soon hear. London late at night, golden lights shimmered on the glass ceiling of the casino. Waiters glided between tables with champagne in hand, and the watchful eyes of security scanned every inch of the floor. It was just another high-stakes evening, millionaires chasing luck, and the house, as always, expecting to win. But at one particular table, something off-script began to unfold. Phil Ivey was playing baccarat and winning. Again, and again, and again. What first looked like luck quickly became a silent spectacle. Chips stacked in front of him like towers of ivory. Dealers exchanged glances. Even seasoned players, the ones used to big wins, now watched something that felt different. There was no hesitation in Ivey's movements, no doubt in his eyes. It was as if he already knew what card was coming next. And the more he won, the more the room began to shift. The easy laughter faded, tension seeped into the air, the sparkle of the night dulled under the weight of something off. This wasn't just a lucky streak. People who've lost too much know how to smell a crooked game. And that night, for the first time in years, the casino felt fear. But fear of what, exactly? Was Ivy cheating? Or had he simply mastered the game? On a level no one else could touch. There was no clear answer, not yet. But one thing was certain, the unease at that table was just the beginning. With each round, the same scene played out, and it grew more unsettling every time. The cards were flipped, and as if by magic, Phil Ivy guessed right, again and again. It was like he had a sixth sense, an invisible radar, something just beyond the reach of normal perception. This wasn't a hot streak, it was surgical precision. The cards seemed to obey him. Some players let out nervous laughs, others fell into an eerie silence, but everyone felt the same thing. Something's not right here, and we just can't see it. Is this even possible? One player whispered to another. Luck has its limits, and he had a point. Because baccarat isn't poker, it's not about skill or reading people. It's a game of chance, pure and simple, or at least that's what everyone believed, until that night. Even the dealers, normally expressionless professionals, began to fumble. Subtle signs betrayed their discomfort. It was as if, despite dealing the cards, they too were losing control of the game. And in a room like that, the moment someone senses a crack in the order, suspicion spreads like wildfire. Was Ivy seeing something no one else could? A pattern, a flaw, a microscopic detail invisible to the average eye? When the human mind can't explain what it sees, it starts to suspect. And there at that table, lit almost too brightly to hide any secrets, his flawless victories began to blind the trust of those around him. Because when everything seems too perfect, that's when doubt stops whispering and starts screaming, is this still a game, or has it become a trick? Have you ever walked into a room where everything seems normal, but your body says otherwise? That tight feeling in your chest, that quiet unrest, like the air itself is hiding something everyone senses, but no one dares to say. That was exactly the atmosphere hanging in the casino's elegant hall, dressed in luxury and disguised as glamour. Phil Ivy kept winning, the dealers kept dealing, the chips kept stacking, but there was something no one wanted to say out loud, as if speaking the truth would make it too real to ignore. The players, usually loud and boastful, had gone strangely silent. A scratch of the chin here, a sideways glance there, jittery hands rearranging chips that didn't need rearranging. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about pride, about doubt, and worst of all, the helplessness of watching someone bend logic, and maybe even the rules, right in front of you with no one able to stop it. The room was whispering, something's wrong, but the fear of sounding paranoid kept every accusation buried deep in the throat. That's when the game changes. It's no longer about winning or losing. It becomes about figuring it out. The question shifts from how much is he going to win to how is he doing this? The truth, even in a whisper, begins to echo. And in that scented, silent hall, the loudest sound was suspicion, slowly rising like smoke. But it wouldn't stay quiet for long, because the next move would bring an answer, and it would be anything but simple. The shift was subtle, barely noticeable. But to those who knew the atmosphere, it was undeniable. The light, lively energy of the casino floor, once filled with quiet laughs and bold bets, began to weigh heavy. With every round Phil Ivy won, the silence thickened. It wasn't admiration anymore. It was discomfort. Tension clung to the marble walls and settled in the eyes of the security team. The gazes that once followed the cards now turned toward one another, and they carried questions. What's going on here? The casino staff, trained to remain composed, even under the highest pressure, started to act differently. Small signs gave it away. Hushed conversations at key spots, dealers being swapped more frequently than usual, a pit boss who lingered a little too long behind Ivy's chair. Something had changed, and the casino knew. When that much money leaves a table that quickly, it's not luck anymore, it's a signal. In a world where every outcome is calculated, chaos isn't just unwelcome, it's a threat. But how do you accuse a man who, on the surface, isn't doing anything wrong? No marked cards, no suspicious movements, just him playing and winning relentlessly. And that, in itself, became the problem. Too perfect, too consistent, too much coincidence for too long. The casino couldn't turn a blind eye anymore. From that moment on, the table wasn't just where the game was played, it became a stage under surveillance. Every card turned. Over wasn't just a part of the game, it was a clue. And soon, the right eyes would start to see the pattern. It was only after hours of silent tension that the whispers finally took shape. Edge sorting. To most in the room, it sounded like some kind of secret code, a shadowy trick whispered about in corners but rarely understood. But those who did know the term also knew the weight it carried. Could it be true? Was Phil Ivey, the poker icon, using nearly invisible imperfections on the backs of cards to spot patterns and predict outcomes? If so, he wasn't cheating in the traditional sense. No hidden cards, no partners in crime. But he was bending the rules, right to the edge of what the casino could tolerate. Edge sorting relies on tiny flaws in the back design of playing cards, imperfections so small the average eye wouldn't even notice. But Ivy didn't have average eyes. With the help of a fluent Mandarin-speaking partner, he made a special request to the dealer: rotate certain cards during the game, claiming it was for luck, a superstition. The casino, eager to please a high-rolling VIP, agreed. And just like that, they handed Ivy the key. Round after round, he could spot the high cards with surgical precision. No trick deck, just pattern recognition and an opportunity. One he didn't hesitate to use. It wasn't crude, it was subtle, elegant, dangerous. If you find a flaw in the system and use it to your advantage, is that cheating or intelligence? That question echoed across the casino and beyond, splitting opinions in half. Because Ivy hadn't broken any explicit rules, but he hadn't played fair either, at least not in the moral sense. Now it wasn't just chips on the table, it was his legacy, his story, his name, and the casino wasn't about to walk away quietly. When millions vanish in a single night, the hunt for a culprit begins fast. The tension that had been slowly building erupted into complete shock when the news broke. The casino refused to pay Phil Ivey the $20 million he had won. The same casino that once welcomed him with red carpets now treated him like an intruder, a thief of invisible chips. To the public, it was like watching a hero pushed off his pedestal without warning. The most respected player in the world, accused of beating the very system that once celebrated him. The word used was cold, blunt, and unforgiving: cheating. There was no ceremony, no carefully worded statement. The casino's stance was clear. Ivy hadn't cheated with his hands, but with his mind. That his calculated, razor-sharp strategy had crossed a line, violating the integrity of the game. The win was voided, the money frozen. And just like that, what had begun as yet another display of brilliance turned into an international scandal. The headlines were ruthless: the silent heist, luxury-level cheating, the genius who went too far. All of it, without a single photo or video of Ivy doing anything explicitly illegal. The fall was brutal. Because this wasn't just about money, it was about trust, legacy, and a story that until then had seemed untouchable. But Ivy, calm as ever, didn't flinch. He didn't beg. He didn't apologize. Quite the opposite. He responded. with ice in his voice and conviction in his eyes. And that response would open the next chapter of this battle. One no longer played with cards, but with lawyers, judges, and reputation on the line. Because when the casino door closes, the courtroom door swings wide open, and Phil Ivey was ready to fight. When Phil Ivey finally chose to speak, he didn't come with excuses. No elaborate justifications. Just a single question. If I used my mind to win, is that a crime now? A simple line, but sharp as a blade. More than a defense, it was a direct challenge, thrown straight at the face of a system that for decades had profited from players' ignorance. And now, when someone was smart enough to flip the game on its head, they were calling him a cheater. Ivey never denied what he did. He didn't hide the technique. He didn't pretend to be shocked by the accusations. What he demanded was clarity. Where exactly had he broken the rules? The casino supplied the cards. The casino allowed the conditions. The casino approved every round, right up until it started losing. It was as if genius was acceptable, until it came with too high a price tag. And for Ivey, this wasn't just a legal battle. It was a strike at the core of who he was. He's always played to win, but never needed to deceive to do it. That one sentence became a headline. It split opinions, ignited debates. Because deep down, the question Ivey threw into the world didn't belong to him alone. It belonged to everyone who's ever been punished for thinking differently, for being sharper than the system around them. Where does brilliance end and cheating begin? The courtroom had now replaced the casino floor, and this time the stakes were even higher. No chips, no cards, just truth, reputation, and one man standing alone at the center of it all. The greatest battle of Phil Ivey's career was just getting started. Truth doesn't always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it creeps in quietly, unsettling, subtle, slipping between long-held beliefs and averted eyes. In Phil Ivey's case, truth came wrapped in legal briefs, expert testimonies, internal reviews, and endless debates over whether a man could be punished for simply paying too much attention. The facts were laid out on the table. No rule had been blatantly broken, yet still many insisted this wasn't fair. But fair for whom? For the casino that allowed it? Or for the player who used what he had? Sharp eyes, quick thinking, and nerves of steel. The uncomfortable truth is, a lot of people don't want justice. They want the game to stay the same. They want the comfort of a world where geniuses don't make things complicated, where extraordinary wins come with simple, clean-cut stories. But when someone breaks the mold, when they outperform the system, they make people uneasy. Because genius is threatening. It exposes flaws, demands change, and forces systems to evolve. And so the question still echoes today. Was the gambling world ever truly ready for a player like Phil Ivey, or did they prefer to keep betting on the bluff? In the end, this wasn't just about cards, or money, or lawsuits. It was about narrative. Who gets to write the story? The winner? The casino? The media? Or the audience? The ones watching, listening, deciding for themselves. Phil Ivey never asked to be a hero or a villain, but by using his mind as his weapon, he exposed something far deeper than any baccarat table. He reminded us that in the game of life, those who think differently aren't always the problem. Sometimes they're just the first to see through the trick. Phil Ivey never asked to be a hero or a villain, but by using his mind as a weapon, he exposed something far beyond baccarat. He proved that in the game of life, those who think differently aren't always the problem. Sometimes they're just the first to see through the trick. If this video kept you hooked until now, drop a like. It shows you value a well-told story. If you enjoy scandals, strategy, and behind-the-scenes moments from the poker world, make sure to subscribe. And tell me in the comments, in your opinion, was Phil Ivey cheating or just a genius? I'll see you in the next episode of Poker Controversies.